Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel if you are new. Today I'm going to be doing my May wrap-up. I only read 5 books in May, which is like an average number of books to be reading, so maybe I shouldn't say only, but I had a pretty mediocre reading month when it came to the ratings, and it's made that much worse by the fact that the books that I gave not so good ratings were books that I thought I was going to love. So like, it's already disappointing that I didn't like the books, but then it's just that much more disappointing knowing that I've loved other books by these authors and I was like very much looking forward to some of these books. So it's just gonna be a little bit of a disappointing reading month, but without further ado, let's just jump right into it. As per usual, I am going to be starting with my least favorite books and working up to my favorite books. So I actually have 2 books that are tied in like last place, but I'm just going to talk about this one first, and that is Leia, Princess of Alderaan. This is obviously a Star Wars book that is a part of the new canon. This takes place before A New Hope when Princess Leia is 16, and it's basically her coming of age story. So even though she is the Princess of Alderaan and you would assume that she would just automatically inherit the throne, she doesn't actually. She has to pass tests of the mind, body, and heart in order to like prove herself to one day become the Queen of Alderaan. So that's basically what this story is about. At the same time, she's noticing that her parents are being a bit distant from her and kind of distracted by other things, and without giving too much away, it's kind of her introduction into like the rebellion and joining the resistance and stuff like that. So I really wanted to love this book because Princess Leia is one of my favorite characters. I'm also desperately trying to get into the new canon, so this was like one of my first introductions into it, and I just didn't really enjoy this book that much. In the vlog that I did for Star Wars-a-thon, I know I said that I gave this book 2.5 stars. Looking back on it, I would probably lower it to a 2 stars because I just didn't really enjoy this book. Like, I can't look back on it and think of many things that I enjoyed about it. I think the main problem that I had with this book was that even though it's like a YA book because we're following a 16-year-old main character, it reads super young. Like, it felt like a middle grade. Just, I don't know if it was the writing style or just like the pacing, the way that the characters handled the situations, but it just felt very juvenile, and I know I'm not the only person that thought that way because so many people love this book, so I thought it was like just me, but actually looking on Goodreads and stuff, I noticed that a lot of people felt the same way about the book just feeling super young. On top of that, I just didn't find the story to be that interesting. I don't usually pick up like coming of age kind of stories because I just find them a bit boring. As well, there was like a subplot romance in this book involving Leia, which is one of the most pointless romances I've ever read about because we knew that it wasn't going anywhere, and the like specific way that it ended, shall we say, I totally predicted in the end of this book. So I was just pretty disappointed with this book overall, but what can you do? The next book that is my least favorite of the month with a 2-star rating, and I cannot believe that I am saying this, we have Sunkissed by Casey West, the one and only, one of my favorite authors. Yeah, she's one of my favorite contemporary romance authors. If you've been following me for any amount of time, you probably know that, and this is her most recent book that came out. I have read all of her published works, and I've thoroughly enjoyed all of them. Like, I think the lowest I've ever rated one was like a 3.5 star, and that was just one book. All of the rest of them, including all of her most recent ones, have been 4 or 5-star reads, but this was a 2-star because frankly, I found the main character to just be super irritating, and I also just realized that I'm so passionate about my distaste for this book that I didn't even tell you what it is about. So I forgot the main character's name already, but her name is Avery, and she is kind of going through a rough time right now because she found out that her best friend kissed her ex-boyfriend, who she knew she was probably going to like get back together with, like they were kind of on a break sort of situation, and she found out that her best friend kissed him, and so she's very upset with her ex-boyfriend, she's very upset with her best friend, and at the same time her parents decide to drag her and her sister to this campground in the middle of nowhere for a couple months where there is no like cell service or access to the internet or anything like that, and there she ends up meeting a boy who is like a part of a band that performs at this campground. It felt a little camp rock at times, I'm not gonna lie, but like not as good. Like, I thoroughly enjoy camp rock, and I did not really like this book at all. So yeah, like I said at the beginning, I just found the main character to be very annoying. I actually far preferred her younger sister, who was like 14 or 15 at the time, and she basically does what I do. She's like a social media person, and she was like filming being at the campground, and she was like filming a documentary about this band, and the whole time I feel like her sister, the main character of this book, talked badly about what the younger sister was doing and like what she was trying to do with her social media and stuff like that, and I just felt really bad for the younger sister and just found Avery to be really annoying. On top of that, I also didn't really care for the love interest either, which is pretty rare. Like, usually I can kind of find a main character annoying but still enjoy the love interest and thusly still enjoy the romance part of the story, but being that I didn't like either of them, I wasn't invested in their romance at all. So again, it was just an overall disappointing book. I don't really have much else to say about it, and frankly, I'm too sad to talk anymore about it anyway. The next book I have here I gave 3.5 stars, and it is another contemporary romance book, and that is The Anatomical Shape of a Heart by Jen Bennett, who is another one of my favorite contemporary romance authors, and I have given all of her other books 4 or 5-star ratings. So this was actually the first book that she wrote in the contemporary romance genre, so I think that's why I gave it a slightly lower rating than some of her other books, because you could just tell that she has definitely grown as an author, because her character development and her writing and everything just wasn't quite as good in this book as it is in her later works. So like I mentioned in my vlog for this book, I think that that's a good thing overall, because you can just see that she has grown as an author and in her writing. So again, I've gone off about the book and didn't tell you what it is about. So in this book, we're following our main character called Beatrix. I did actually remember a main character's name this time, and it's because I think the name Beatrix is really cool, so it stuck in my mind. But she is an artist, and she mainly draws like bodies and anatomy, and she really wants to be able to draw cadaver bodies so she can enter it into an art contest, and it would also just be really good on her resume to have like drawn anatomy and stuff straight from the source. So she tries to meet with a professor to see if they would be able to get her in to be able to draw these cadaver bodies, but the professor never shows up, so she ends up taking a really late bus home. On that bus, she meets Jack, who she is kind of immediately infatuated with, and she thinks he might be this infamous graffiti artist that has been spray painting words around the town, and nobody knows who has done it, and at this point he's done it so many times that whoever it is, if they get caught, would be facing felony charges, and she suspects that it might be Jack. So that is basically the setup to the story. So like I said, I gave it 3.5 stars. I did really enjoy it. I just don't think it was quite as good as some of her other books, so that's why I didn't give it a full 4-star rating. But overall, I would still totally recommend this book if you enjoy contemporary romances that are also YA. Next up, we have Labyrinth of Evil. This is another Star Wars book that I read for Star Wars-a-thon. This, however, is not a part of the new canon. It's actually a part of Star Wars Legends, which I'm still kind of figuring that whole thing out and like what books fit into which categories. It's kind of new to me. But yeah, I don't think this is a part of the canon anymore. It's a part of like the Legends or whatever. So this takes place right before Revenge of the Sith. It's basically a setup to the film, and that's when this book came out, was in 2005 as like the prequel to the movie. So I really enjoyed this. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I probably could give it 5 out of 5 stars because I genuinely had such a fun time reading this book, but I just wasn't quite on the same level as some of my other 5-star reads, so I ended up settling at a 4-star, but I genuinely had such a fun time reading this book. And it might be because we mainly followed Anakin and Obi-Wan, and Anakin is my favorite character, and I love him and Obi-Wan as like a duo together, but we also do get perspectives from a lot of other characters, as you usually do in the Star Wars movies or books. So we actually got quite a bit of General Grievous and Count Dooku in this book. Those were like the 4 characters that this mainly followed, and this is definitely not going to be the book for everybody because, like I mentioned in my vlog as well, this is kind of info dumpy, and it does it for quite a while. It's not just like info dumpy at the beginning. Like, well over 100 pages into the book, we were still getting these kind of info dumpy sort of moments, which I think for the average Star Wars fan, it wouldn't really work for them. But for me, although I consider myself to be like a diehard Star Wars fan, I get a little confused sometimes. So I appreciated like the background stories to these characters and things that like other Star Wars fans would probably know and remember, but I don't. So I appreciated those moments, but I think that other people might not love them. But other than that, like I said, I just had such a fun time reading this book. Like, there's anything overly spectacular about it. Like, I don't think the writing is amazing. Like, the characters, I mean, what can I say about the characters? Like, they're awesome. And, well, actually, also, I was gonna say that you can't, like, do Star Wars characters wrong, but you definitely can. You can write them wrong. And that is the main problem that I've had with a lot of other Star Wars books that I've read, whereas I think this author actually captured the essence of these characters really well. Like, Anakin and Obi-Wan's banter with each other, and just everybody in general. I think he did a really good job, like, writing their dialogue and just writing these characters in a way that felt really authentic. So yeah, that's about all I really have to say about this book, is that I just had a really good time reading it, and it actually felt like something from the Star Wars universe, whereas a lot of the other things that I read sometimes feel more like I'm reading a fan fiction than I'm reading something that's actually a part of the universe. So I really love this book, and I would totally recommend it if you are a Star Wars fan interested in picking up some of the novels. So that brings us to my favorite book of the month, which is The Paris Hours by Alex George. I think I gave this either 4 or 4.5 stars. Either way, I really enjoyed it. This is historical fiction. I've also heard it described as literary fiction, which I'm gonna be honest, I'm still not really sure what that genre means, but I've heard people describe this as it, so if that's helpful for you, there you go. But it is obviously set in Paris in 1927, and it's set over the course of one day, and we're following 4 main characters. So we're following one fella who is a puppeteer, we're following a man who is searching for his daughter, we're also following another man who is a painter, and he owes quite a bit of money, and he's trying to acquire that money within this one day, or he is going to be killed for not paying his debt. And finally, we're following a young woman whose husband sells this notebook that she has, but it wasn't his to sell, and she's desperately trying to get it back because if what is in the notebook gets out, it could ruin her and her family. So that is basically what this book is about, and I almost feel like the synopsis that I'm giving you makes it seem more exciting than it actually is, because to be completely frank, for a good portion of this book, which the book isn't even that long, it is not super exciting. We're mostly following the characters like living their everyday sort of mundane lives, and it isn't until like the last couple of chapters that the story actually gets really exciting, and yet I didn't find it boring one bit. There is something about the way that the author writes that just makes you super intrigued with these characters' lives. And while it does take place over one day, we do get quite a few flashback chapters which just explain to you how the characters ended up into the situations that they're in today, and then we get to see how they will or will not solve their problems over the course of one day. So it was just a really interesting book, but again, it's one of the ones where I can see it not being for everybody just because it does feel a little bit mundane at times, but for me, I still found it to be super interesting. And also I can see some people having a problem with the ending because I thought the ending was super good, obviously, otherwise I wouldn't have given it like almost 5 stars, but it's also a very frustrating ending. And like even now, I'm frustrated with the ending, but I still think it was a good ending, whereas I think other people are just gonna see the frustrating part and they're not going to see the good part of it. So all of that combined just makes it a really hard book to recommend because I love it so much, and I would hate to recommend it to people and then people be like, this was really boring and had a stupid ending. Like, that would make me feel really bad about it. Either way, the important part is I really enjoyed it. It was my favorite book of the month, and I got it from the library, but I'm definitely going to be looking out for an actual copy to buy so I can have it as a part of my library. So yeah, those are the 5 books that I read in May. Leave me a comment down below. Let me know if you've read any of these books and what you thought of them. I'd love to discuss them with you in the comments. I hope you all enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye!